So, welcome back. I've put on the fanciest shoes for the person I'm announcing here now. It's because he's working for Bing, and Bing deserves some love too, right? I mean, we all like Google, especially after Alberto today, but really, we want Bing to do better. Because a bigger Bing means a Google that has to listen more to everyone as well, right? So I'm very pleased to announce Arnold. He's a principal engineering manager at Microsoft. He just told me that the only thing that matters about that term is the term principal, because that determines his salary, and everything else after that really doesn't matter. He works on AI. He's going to talk to us about that, and I'm actually going to sit front row because I don't want to miss it. So take it away.
Thanks, Yoast. So my name's Arnold. I work as Bing as an engineer. I'm not used to giving a speech like this. Usually I work on the code. I work on the parts of Bing where like pretty much everything Yoast taught yesterday, like in his opening keynote, was like discovery, indexing, ranking, and I'm working on like all three of them. I work across that stack with my team, and we work on like making search better, trying to get the best content to our users. And I feel very privileged that every day I have the chance to like work on those interesting problems, and there's like a lot of technical challenges on these problems. And as a search engine, we really have two customers. We have webmasters, like many of you, and we have people who search for information. And really, both of these customers are super important for us. Our job is get the best information from the webmasters and connect them with our users. And to be able to do that, we need high-quality content from all of you. And we need to figure out how to get that high-quality content to the users, understand what are users searching for, and deliver like the most relevant search results. As an engineer, I spent really a lot of time thinking about the technical problems. How do we process trillions of web pages every day? How do we, like, these are like large-scale like platform problems. How do we decide what to rank? How do we understand like the web pages? There's like a lot of machine learning problems like in this space as well. I'm honored to be here. I would like to thank Yoast and all of you for giving me the chance. I learned a lot in the past 2 days, because as I said, I think a lot about the technical challenges, but being here, listening to like the great talks, listening to all of you having great conversations, gives me insight in like what matters to you, how do you experience like interacting with search engines. And there's a lot of takeaways from me that I can apply back at my job when I'm going home, like next week. In this talk, I would like to show a little bit like what do we do as Bing, how can we work together, doing a better job, making the web a better place. So the team I'm leading is called the Beyond Language Understanding team. We call ourselves Bling. The reason we call ourselves Beyond Language Understanding is because the web is much more than natural language understanding. Natural language understanding is plain text and try to make sense out of it. With a web page, you have visual information. You know, here's the title in a certain location. You know, there's a font size. There's like different types of visual information you get from a web page. That's more than just text. But it's even more than that. Web pages link to each other, something we call a web graph. And even if web pages don't link together, the same, like different web pages from like the same website, they have some relation with each other. Or different web pages that talk about different concepts, they are related to each other because they talk about the same thing. So we distinguish between something we call primary content and secondary content. The primary content is really what is this page about? Why does this page exist? The secondary content are things like copyright statement, navigation of the site, things that are important, but not the key part of the reason this web page exists. Distinguishing between these two is pretty important for us, because otherwise we get confused with what is this web page about. We don't really understand like what concepts really matter. And I would want to talk a little bit about what has happened in the past 10 years or so that we've been working on Bing. Basically, back about 10 years ago, Bing was a destination experience. What this kind of comes down to is you search for something, we give you 10 blue links, and you click on one of the links that hopefully matches what you're searching for, and that's the destination we show you. Then, like, Bing became a platform. Bing became like in multiple places, and today it's like an AI platform. Basically, what Bing allows us to do is it's like one of the first and largest investments in AI, like within Microsoft. And if you look at like what does this mean, it means we need to deal with a huge amount of data, all the data on the web. And to do that, we need great platform solutions. And that means things like Azure, like services that are available to use for everyone. Like these kind of solutions, they were first needed to actually build Bing. In terms of AI, if you think about how do we build AI, how do we do things that have human-like capabilities, you basically need two things. You need knowledge, and you need some fancy machine learning algorithm that can do something useful with that knowledge. And a lot of the knowledge that we humans have is on the web. I think the web is like the largest human knowledge vault. And if you collect all that data, and now you try to use this in machine learning algorithms, you try to make something good out of it, like be it search, be it a virtual assistant like Cortana, or maybe the Internet of Things. There's like a lot of things you can do like with this data, with those machine learning capabilities, and we really strive to empower like everyone with like better technology, make everyone more productive by like using those technologies like every day. So one of the products that I've been working on that like we have as Bing is recommending articles in like a news feed on your phone. And this is not just news. There's actually pretty much any article that's on the web that we would like to recommend if it's something that would be interesting to you. Yesterday in like Rand Fiskin's talk, like one of the complaints was, over the years, click-through rate now seems to be going down year over year. We are not getting like a lot of visits to our web pages anymore, or at least not as many as before. And the interesting thing is, we actually have a metric that measures what's the click-through rate of the articles like in our feed. And this is a metric we try to optimize for. So we want people to we show an article, we want people to like visit this article. We don't want to have just clicks. We want to actually have satisfying click. There's like very little value in getting a user to click on an article, be back in a second because they didn't enjoy the article. And that really means that the content should be personalized to what are you interested in, but also it should be high quality. Should be some unique story from experts that maybe are surprising, something new you learned from this content, and probably it should be memorable, something that's worth sharing to your friends, something that maybe even days, weeks, or a year later, you still remember, hey, this was an interesting article, that was something I read about. And I believe that a lot of these articles are blog posts. There's a lot of people who have a lot of interesting things they write about. And there's a huge amount of articles that are there created on the web every day by creative people like you. And we want to provide access to like all that interesting information. It's very difficult to find that information without having someone, your friends, or like a search engine or a recommendation feed telling you, hey, there's a new article about this topic, you're interested in this topic, and maybe you want to read it. Something else I'd like to share is that we actually build products for both consumers and businesses. Microsoft has bought LinkedIn, they've bought Skype, there's like GitHub now. There's different kind of products. Some of them are for businesses, some of them are both, some of them are for consumers. We kind of have a unique position like to help drive the AI computing shift, because we've been doing advanced research in this area for 25 years or more. We have more than 1.5 billion active users across like different products of Microsoft. And we have an open nature of our platform and tools to enable personal, intelligent interactions across devices and platforms. So if you look at it, there's world knowledge, like the web. There's work knowledge, like LinkedIn. There's user knowledge, like what do you need? What are you interested in? One of the work areas that we operate in is something where we basically have not web data, but we have data within, in this case, our company. And if you work at Microsoft, we provide search, you search for my name there, and like this thing will pop up, and it will show like, hey, here's like the contact information, this is the organization that I belong to, here's like the calendar events, maybe some files, some slides, or other kind of things that I share within the company. All of this is integrated like in our search engine, but it won't be visible to anyone outside the company. It's like heavily protected information because it's like confidential within the company. This is Surface. We also offer, or we're working on to offering this to like other companies as well. So if Yoast would have this, then in Yoast you would search for someone, you would see like whatever internal information that would be out there. And there's actually like some pretty cool information here, like office location, for example. This is like a floor plan of like the floor where my office is, and my office is like the one in like the bottom left there. I have a beautiful view. I actually should have put a picture in here, but this is an office in Bellevue, downtown Bellevue. We have a view, 2 mountain ranges with like snow on top, and it's perfect place to work, I would say. If you don't want to look at your screen, you look outside and you're like, I should go skiing tonight. And we actually have ski resorts, half-an-hour drive, so you could go skiing after work as well. Another place where we apply our technology is Microsoft Office. If you're writing an article and there's something you want to look more information about, you can actually, you don't need to copy it, you don't need to go to your browser, you don't need to go to a search engine. You could just highlight it, right-click, do a smart lookup, get some results about it, do your research right within the product. So when you think about what is the goal of a search engine, you would maybe think about discover and index everything, create a knowledge graph, have super fast access to information. But it's actually not quite that. You want to provide people who search for stuff with timely, relevant results that they can trust. And it should provide insight about whatever it is that you're searching for. So Bing is bigger than you think. Unfortunately, within the Netherlands, we are somewhere in the bottom of the European market in terms of market share. In the US, we have about 33% desktop market share. And on average in Europe, we have about 10%. Some countries we are doing reasonably well. We would want to be much better. We would want to do better in terms of like internationalization, deal with different languages, provide search for all the different countries. And this is something that we are improving, we are investing in. But it's not that we are like nowhere. We are like pretty big like as it is already. So I want to show a little bit about how do we use AI in search and unveil some of the magic that we are doing. So one of the things we are doing is something we call Q&A. I think Yoast referred to it as rich snippets. And if you search for what's the largest city in Washington, we understand web pages, and we think like, hey, there's two things, population, there's area. We present a table, and we say, well, those are the largest cities in Washington. To be able to do this, we need to understand that a web page has a table with this information. And a table, if a website's nice, maybe they use table tags. But often they use div tags, they use other kind of like HTML tags. And there's so many websites out there, it can get extremely messy, and it can be very difficult to actually understand like, hey, what is the information on this web page? If we use markup like schema.org, you can make our life a lot easier. There's a relatively small percentage of websites that use this data, but when there's markup data, we could directly use it. We can also use the markup data to use it as training data in our machine learning models to basically recognize, hey, it's kind of free training data that says like, hey, this part of the web page means that information. We have answers, table answers, we have passage answers, we have list answers. And we also try to understand like, hey, what is it that the user is interested in, and maybe highlight that. So if you look at the passage answer on like the top right, you see we highlight like what is the heart rate range for an athlete. We are highlighting here like how many beats per minute. And it's quite remarkable that this isn't just matching keywords. Like the keywords of the query are not in the highlights here. We actually understand like, hey, this is the part that is probably most interesting for you, and that's what we are highlighting. If you search for like maybe 10 most dangerous hiking trails in the world, this is something I would search for because I'm interested in doing those hikes, going out there, and I've crossed a few of those lists already. We will have web pages that are like often blog posts, and they will have sections where they say like Angel's Landing, El Camino del Rey, Huashan, and then there's like some paragraphs, some description, some pictures. And there's a lot of web pages where section headings might not really be like a good list for like any possible like answer you would have. And we try to recognize with our deep learning algorithms like, hey, these section headings might be a good list, even though they're just section headings. They're not like a list in LI, LU, like elements. Something that I think is actually quite amazing is answering a query like this. Who sacked Russell Wilson the most? Russell Wilson is an American football player, and sacking, he's a quarterback of the Seahawks. And sacking someone means you grabbed him and you put him on the ground before he like got a chance to throw the ball. And to answer a query like this, I don't think you would find a web page on the internet that actually has this answer. You actually need to understand, okay, there's like something that's a football season. A football season lasts from September through like February. There's every week there's a game, and this guy plays on this team, and when he plays, he's doing passing games, he's doing regressing plays, and for each play there's like a chance that he gets sacked, and there's some information about that, and you need to connect all these different pieces of like structured data together to be able to like answer a question like this. Something else I wanted to highlight was that we actually try to be smart about correcting your spelling when you make a mistake, of course. But we also want to show there's different perspectives. Is cholesterol bad for you? There's LDL, there's HDL. Some of it is good, some of it is bad. And we will show like, hey, there's this perspective, there's that perspective. And we try to give you like a more complete picture of information here. So how does this all work? It starts with discovering URLs. And this is something that, with our partnership with Yoast, will be much easier for everyone who has like the Yoast plugin, who uses my Yoast, because Yoast will just tell us, hey, this new page just got created, this changed, and we don't need to figure this out ourselves. For most websites, today we need to figure out, hey, when should we crawl this page? We need to predict, maybe this page has changed, and it's like a difficult thing to like predict. Then we still need to crawl like the pages. We need to understand the page. We need to figure out, is this trustworthy information? Do some ranking on it. Extract the answers. Do some clustering of passages to understand, hey, these are one perspective, this like another perspective. Do some perspective ranking. And we also need to figure out when a query enters the search engine, does this query warrant a Q&A answer or not? Or do we even have like a good Q&A answer for it? Another example I wanted to show, if you search for Brexit, there's actually more than two perspectives. There's like many different political perspectives, and we will try to show you like all these different perspectives, even if there's like more than 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. Yesterday in Wolfgang's talk, I believe in the Q&A section, there was like a question about fake news. What do you do if there's fake news? Fake news is the first. They get all the clicks. They get better signals. They get better ranking. How do I counter that? How do I solve that kind of problem? We believe giving multiple perspectives, it may not completely eliminate fake news, but at least it gives you a chance to see like, hey, here's a perspective, might be fake news, here's another perspective, and it gives you a chance to be better educated, get better information about the topic that you are looking for to find more information about. Something else cool I wanted to show is our image search. Here's an image from Katie Middleton. And you can actually highlight a section in this image, and you can, maybe you like the shoes, and you want to find similar shoes and buy them yourselves. And we actually can search for related products based on like the section that you highlight in the image. And we will extract, hey, this is the price of the shoe, from maybe structured data, sometimes from advertising feeds. And you can now like buy maybe like a similar product. And this image search, it works for all sorts of products. It works to find similar images if you're looking for something. And this is a functionality that I think many people probably aren't aware of. I personally, like, I learned it. I saw a talk from like our image team, and I was like, hey, that's cool. I've never seen that before, so I wanted to share that with you. So what are the ingredients to have SEO success? First, you need to get your URLs discovered. There's many ways for that to happen. One of the ways is we'll just crawl your page, there's a link to a new page. We will find it at some point. There are XML sitemaps, there are RSS feeds that make this more efficient. And now there's like APIs. We work with Yoast to like get like a ping when something changes, and we can react even quicker to that. Because as I mentioned earlier, getting results timely is something that's pretty important. You don't, if you search for something, you don't want only old results. You actually want the latest result, what is happening right now. The next step is getting URLs selected in the index. For this, you would want to create relevant, unique content that has value to someone. You would want to avoid duplicate URLs, useless URL parameters. And what I mean by that is even things like redirects. It's quite common that web pages redirect from A to B, from B to C, from C to D. And if we crawl A, then we're like, oh, that didn't have the content, it points us to somewhere else. And sometimes there's redirect chains of maybe 10 different pages, and just getting that single content means we have to crawl 10 pages to get there, which is quite inefficient because it will cost the webmaster bandwidth, but it will also mean that instead of getting that one page with 10 crawls, if it was just one crawl, we could probably have crawled 10 other pages and knew more about this website. With having useless URL parameters, it's somewhat of a similar problem. There are web pages that have session ID in their parameter. It changes every single time you load this page, but the content is the same. So there could be millions, billions of different pages with a different session ID. The URLs are all different. And if we don't realize that these are the same, we may be crawling a lot of pages just to get that same content. Not only does it mean that we have to crawl a lot of different pages for the same content, it also means when we have signals about the page, those signals can be spread out across many different pages. And with the signals being spread out, it may become more difficult for us to understand how good this page actually is. So then to get your URLs crawled, it's pretty important to allow us to crawl it. If you are blocking Bing bots in robot.txt, we'll have a very difficult time crawling it because we are not allowed to. And guiding us to the latest content, of course, always helps as well. And then if we want to better understand your page, it helps us to tell, hey, this is the title. Use maybe an H1 tag. Don't use like the H6 tag with some CSS markup and tell us that's the title. We may get confused because H6 usually means it's somewhere a section down in the page. Give us some schema.org information. Maybe limit usage of JavaScript. Any page with like a lot of JavaScript, especially if there's like a lot of other like external secondary resources that we need to load, and we need to dynamically render a page. It could be that we have to crawl a whole bunch of different JavaScript pages to just be able to like render and understand this page. So we actually have announced, I believe last week at SMX West, a search engine optimization conference in the US. We have an API, like in our Webmaster Tools, where you can submit up to 10,000 URLs per day to Bing for your site. This way, it's very similar to like how Yoast lets us know, like, hey, there are like signals that have changed. It will help us a lot. The Yoast integration, as I mentioned, through my Yoast will tell us these pages have been created, and we'll be able to take interaction directly. I was waiting for Yoast to take a picture. We would want to know everything about your content. Make it as simple for us as possible. Even if you don't do it, we will use our machine learning. We will try to attempt to understand it. But the simpler you make it for us, the easier my job becomes. So if you use basic HTML, it's better, it's easier. I'm a developer, I'm lazy. Tell us more via schema. I don't need to create the most fancy machine learning algorithms to try to understand your complicated website. There's many ways to do this, through HTML5 text, through JSON.d, through schema.org. And as I said, limit the usage of heavy JavaScript. So something else that you would care about is how do I get my website ranked high? And there's a notion of authority. And for authority, it's really about getting high content quality. That's different from the rest of the web. Just copying someone else's content, hosting it as your own. Not the best way to get authority. And you want to get an audience. You want people who actually care about that content. So we want to know, can we trust this content? We want to know, is this content useful and sufficiently detailed? And is it well presented? If you have a lot of pop-ups, you have a lot of ads all over the place, it may not be the best page that a user would want to visit. I also wanted to let you know, if you care about your website, you care about how well is your site doing, how well is it doing in Bing, we have something called Bing Webmaster Tools. It gives you a lot of insight in our understanding of your site. You can help us through the APIs, through the Webmaster Tools to give us an even better understanding as well. And I would like to say thank you. Reach out, ask questions. There are a bunch of Twitter tags here. I'm personally not on Twitter, but I'm closely working with these people. So I'm sure if you reach out, they'll get a hold of me.
Thank you. Actually, your colleague Copernicus has been tweeting throughout your presentation. So it's, I think he's in Seattle, so that's
He's in
timing.
Seattle, yeah.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Not all at the same time, people. Come on. In the back there, can you throw that far? Or should I throw it? Catch.
Thanks for the talk. I guess we were talking about the other day about Google's attribution on stuff that you're indexing inside of the results of Bing. How do you guys handle attribution for data you're pulling in?
So when we show answers, we will always show like, hey, here's the source of like the answer. So in that way, we always give like attribution to the source. Also, when we show answers, we show like a small snippet. Usually, it's not the complete information that people are looking for. So most of the time, it gives you like a preview, like, hey, this is what's happening on this web page. It probably answers your question. Here is like a relevant snippet, but you probably want to go to the website and maybe read more about it.
Hopefully. Thank you.
That's what we all hope for, right? Traffic from Bing or Google, but they're not important now. Any other questions? Up here. This. Well, that was quite good.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for the talk. How do you feel about the rise of pure JavaScript applications in terms of indexability? So I do know that there's official advice to basically deliver two versions of your web app, one for the crawler, which is HTML, and the other one which is not. What are your thoughts on that?
So definitely, as I mentioned, like JavaScript like makes it somewhat expensive to like render, can make it more difficult to like understand. There's like a different ways of rendering the page. You could use a different screen resolution. Maybe it's different. I think ultimately, like, just using only JavaScript, not being able to read the page, it's just more difficult for us to like work with, so it's not ideal. But providing two different versions, if they are like really different, you provide the search engine maybe sometimes even with different content. Like it happens that we crawl a web page and we say, hey, we're BingBot, we want to look at your page. And the web page is completely different from what a user will see in the browser. Obviously, that's a big problem as well, because we'll make the page available as we see it, and then we show it to the user, and it's just not relevant to the user because we saw a completely different version of it. But if the two have the same content and the plain, more static HTML will give you the same content, just easier to understand for search engines, then that will be fine. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks.
So don't cloak. Can you pass it that way?
That's easy.
That's easy, yeah.
Good thing I didn't drop it.
Can you stand up, Chris?
So, stand up?
Yeah, please.
Can we just peel back a little bit on the market share statement you made? It's north of 30%, which seems higher to me than what I've seen over the years. Actually, a significant jump. So you mentioned web, but what came to my mind was mobile search, voice search, and visual search. Three sort of more relevant kind of, not necessarily relevant, but definitely more futuristic type of applications of search technology. So can you just give us a little bit more information on how you captured that market share? Or not necessarily captured it, but how are you calculating it? Is it just web?
So the market share here, the 33%, is like the US market share on desktop. So it doesn't include mobile or other applications. I actually don't know what our market share is across different applications. Like I work more on the technical parts of the problem, and the market share is like more a business side. So I actually don't know like all the details of that, so I wouldn't be able to answer that question.
All right, well, just real quick.
But you could reach out on Twitter and see if you can get an answer.
Well, and it sounds like some folks are listening in Seattle. So actually, so there's a different way that I was thinking about this. So let me ask you, when you look at the future of search and it potentially being like a browserless experience, whether that be voice or visual, do you have any thoughts on how Microsoft could lead that moving forward? Because when I think of voice search, I think about immediately, personally, this is my own bias, Amazon Alexa. When I think about visual search, I think about Bing search, Google Lens or Pinterest Lens. But how do you personally see the future and how Microsoft could lead the way?
So I believe a couple of weeks ago, Satya, our CEO, he announced that rather than competing against Alexa, we're actually working together. Like we are making our like search, our results available like as services, and we want to be available on any platform. We want to be very open with different places where we could contribute with more rich information, more rich data. For me personally, like I'm trying to understand the data, and the better we understand the data, the better we can answer a question, be it on like a spoken query, like on Cortana, or like through some other service like Alexa, or be it on like a typed query or on any like different device. We just try to work on making this available. And what the exact business strategy is, like I'm not qualified to like answer that.
I love it when we have engineers on stage actually dare say that. Can I be cheeky and inject the question? You were talking about it's expensive to crawl all these pages. How much does Bing crawl, really? Do you have any ideas on that? The size of a web index must be gigantic, but it's...
So I'm not sure if I can give exact numbers, but they're like pretty much an infinite number of URLs, just because one URL with a parameter like query equals some free text, it would just be a SERP page. You can have infinitely many URLs like
Yeah.
that, right? We keep track of like trillions of URLs, and we crawl billions of URLs, like tens of billions of URLs, like every single day.
It's always scary to me to think of that, because tens of billions of URLs is a number that I don't ever want to get close to. But
if it's in your bank account, wouldn't be too bad.
Any more questions? I can't see you anymore. The light's too stark. I think that's it. Then let's have another round of applause for Arnold.
Thank you.